Hello and welcome to VIsBasic Unit 2 MicroLesson. Now, the issue that this particular week is you start to do some of your calculations. Now, what I've done is I've downloaded Visual Studio 2017. It'll all depend on which version of Visual Studio you use. For instance, I have lblsample.content. I think in some of the other versions earlier, it's lblsample.caption, and then you have a properties list on your right-hand side. But the main goal is to kind of look at a form and a flow-through. So what I've done, kind of ignore that. What I've done is I have a main form. And let me pull that up real quick. I have my main window that looks like this. I've got 3 different objects in my main window. I have my text box, which is this really big text box right here. It's called txt sample. So I'm going to go over here so you can kind of move it. Its name is txt sample. These are my properties down here. I have my button, which I have changed the caption of the button to be copy value, which is right there. The name of the button is called btn copy. You'll notice it's btn then copy. So btn is the the naming convention, btn. If I look at my text box, it's txt, and then the name of what it is, I just said sample. And then over here I actually have my label, and it's called LBL sample. Now in this, like any other version of VisBasic, I could simply double-click on the object, and it'll take me to the code related to that object. You'll notice that I have 2 different objects here. I have my text box, which talks about how it's a event called text changed, meaning when the text box changes, it's going to do something. I don't really like to code my text boxes. I usually like to make it very, very simple. Labels tell me what is said. Text boxes get input from the user. Command buttons produce something, make something happen. So if I look back here, I've just made a very, very simple program to kind of show you the interface and the flow through. So I put a button. It's called copy value, right? It's called btn, what was the name of it? btn copy. My text box is called txt sample. I could call it txt user input, whatever. And then my label over here at present is blank. In an actual interface, I might do something like input the data that you want to the right. So I could come along here, and I could double-click on it. I could put like input. Ooh, it's giving me a hard time here. There we go. Input value to right in text box. All right. So it's kind of big. I put in a value in it. All right. So I make it larger so I can see it. Then a little bit, I put a drop shadow in it so you can kind of see it. Do a shift enter. Shift enter will allow you to enter into the box itself. There used to be a property called multi-line that would do the same thing, but different versions of things along those lines. Mine's pretty special. I change it to drop shadow. Cool. Okay, so my label usually gives some sort of input to the user or feedback to the user. Hey, this is what I want you to do, right? And I'm moving it around, and then my text box is usually, this is where I want you to input data. The button is usually some sort of function that's performed. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to first show you what it does. I'm going to walk you through the code, and then I'm going to show you what it does. Dim str sample is string. This declares a string, and we're going to get to variables in a bit, but this declares a string of type str sample. You'll notice the value, I call it sample. I could have called it str number input, whatever. But remember, if your version's different, remember the reason I told you, hey, please send me the videos, because the versions might be slightly different. And as long as I've got the videos, even if it doesn't work in my version, or mine works in your version or whatever, as long as you have the videos, we're good and I can see what's going on. So dim stands for dimension, if anybody cares. Basically, this creates a area in memory called strsample, and it says it wants a string value. Then strsample equals txtsample.text. So what it's going to do is it's then in our code, it's going to find what the text box is, or what's called txtsample, which is our text box, and then it's going to access the text property and put the value in strsample. And then what's going to happen is it's going to do lblsample.content. Now lblsample, older versions it was .caption if it was a label, but lblsample is where the values are going to go back to. I just use the value sample. So lblsample.content equals strsample. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, get the input from the user that they put in txtsample, put it in strsample, then take it out of strsample and put it in lblsample.content. And this is giving a very basic flow through, because usually what happens in some sort of setup is labels give guidance to the user of what they're going to input. The user that inputs it into the text box, the button then does something. On some of the options it talks about clearing the text boxes. I could put a clear text box that'll clear different labels. So I have a calculate, excuse me, I said text box. I meant command button. So I can put a clear command button that all it does, it accesses my text box and labels and goes blank, 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 puts them all equal to blank. And then I could have a calculate command button that says I want the value out of this text box and I want the value out of this text box. I want you to do something to it and I want to put you the value back in here. Now, rather than do all that, because the more I do, the more it approaches your challenge, I simply said, okay, let's do a very, very basic program. For those of you wondering why my camera seems very fogged over to me, I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll have to see in the long run, but I think when they repaired my camera, they left a packing film over it, so I have to call them again. So anyway, dim strsample is string. strsample equals txtsample. So, hey, get the value of txtsample, put it in strsample. Then take whatever the value of strsample is and put it back in the label. Notice I've used my naming conventions and I've gone through. So I'm going to go ahead and start this bad boy so you can see how it kind of works eventually. Okay, there we go. So I'll bring this along. So I'm a user, I'm coming along, I look at this, input value to the right in text box, all right? So I put in a value, 34. And then I push copy value. Well, I'm not really sure what it's going to copy the value to, but I'm pretty sure when I click the copy value button, something's going to happen. Copy value. It puts the 34 in that text box. Awesome! I could have a reset button that blanks this out and sets this back to insert the number over to the right. However you want to go about doing it, but you get a general feel for what's going on here. Now, the other thing they talk about in this particular week, in addition to algorithms, is comments. And I know I keep commenting on comments. Go figure. So the idea behind a comment is, once again, it's to give you an idea of what's going on. So I can come up here. Let's say I want to put it right above this. I just push, oh, poop. Didn't work. I put it right above here. I push enter, go up here, I put the apostrophe. This is a sample program that takes in a number and copies it to the label. Not extensive, not huge, not very detailed, but detailed enough that if I went away for this for, 3 weeks or whatever, and then I came back, I might have called this, like I called it VBTut1. 3 weeks. I don't know what VBTut1 was. But if I come back and I look and in this comments it says, this is a sample program that takes in a number and copies it to the label. Boom. Great. Now, in our programs that are like 3 lines long, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference because why do we care? It seems like an extra hoop to jump through. But it develops those habits now, so as your programs get more complex, you'll be able to go, okay, and I'm in the habit of putting those comments, so they get more complex, and I already know what's going on. I already have an idea. So that concludes kind of my micro lesson for this week. I hope that it helps you out, and I look forward to seeing your assignments and what you got accomplished this week. And talk to you soon.